Hi, Shauna. I just had somebody text me they had trouble sending them another one. Hello, Captain Lara.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Megan.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Megan.
All right. I think we have everybody, right?
Morning, Maurice. Maurice just joined. We had one person had trouble logging in. I just sent them the link. And Chief Rosado from Meriden emailed saying that they will not be able to attend today.
All right. So we want to give it a minute before I call it to order, or are we good to go?
Oh, here's Andrea. Bills from Family Reentry, I think might be the only person we're waiting for at this point.
Okay. Let's just give it a minute or two.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think Bill, I see him joining now. All right. So we'll give it a minute.
Oh, and Nancy Turner.
Nancy's here.
Nancy Turner?
Yeah, she's up top.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, no, that's
That's
no.
Nancy Tyler.
Tyler, I'm sorry.
This is a morning test. Morning, Andrea.
Good morning.
All right.
Hi, Bill.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
We're just going to give it one more minute for folks to join.
Yeah, I think it's just that one more.
Sure. Yeah. We can stretch it to 9:04, Jerry.
I usually go to 9:05, but
I was just gonna say, I was like, Jerry usually has a 5-minute window.
Oh, see, there we go. Got a couple.
the person that just logged in for SDO Zoom 2, could you just identify?
I think that's Kirsten, Jerry.
Is that Kirsten? Is that you?
Oh, that's not me.
Oh, or staff.
Not sure who it is.
SDO Zoom 2. Could you just identify yourself for the purposes of the
Attendance.
minutes and the attendance?
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I was listed under SDO2. Adam Richardson, I'm not Senator Flexer's legislative aide.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think with that, we'll call the meeting to order at 9:05. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this subcommittee. in case you're not aware, my name is Megan Scanlon. I'm the CEO at CCADV. Myself and Senator Flexer are the co-chairs of the DV Advisory Council, the bigger council that meets. As you're aware, there's 3 subcommittees that are meeting before our January meeting, this being one of them. So there's a couple just like procedural things we're going to do this morning to set up and establish the leaders of the committee, and then establish some of the priorities of the committee. But first and foremost, I just thought maybe we can go around and just do introductions, because I know some of you did meet at the full council, but some of you might not have. So I'm going to start. I'm just going to name as I see you in the square. So Nancy Tyler, you're my first.
Oh, lucky me. Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I'm Nancy Tyler. I am an attorney in Hartford, and I am on this committee, on this board, by virtue of my past experience and my time on the CCADV board of directors. So I'm very glad to be here, and happy to contribute whatever I can contribute as a person who's been through this before.
Right. Thank you. And then I have Gail Hardy.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Gail Hardy, and I am an executive assistant state's attorney at the Chief State's Attorney's Office, and I am the Chief State's Attorney's designee.
Right. Welcome. Honorable Kevin Doyle.
Morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Doyle. I'm a judge assigned to the Hartford Judicial District, and it's an honor for me to be part of the committee.
Great, thanks. I have Geraldine O'Neill Wild. I don't know that you need an introduction, but please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Jerry Wild. I'm Vice President of Program Operations at the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I've been there for 22 years now, and previously oversaw shelter programs as well as the Family Violence Victim Advocate Program in all the courts.
Representative Nuccio.
Good morning, everybody. I am Tammy Nuccio. I'm the state representative for the 53rd District and appointed to this commission from the minority leader.
Andrea O'Connor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea O'Connor. I am the Family Violence Victim Advocate Program Manager at the Umbrella Center for Domestic Violence Services. I supervise the court-based advocates at New Haven, Milford, and Derby.
Great. Thanks, Andrea. Phyllis DeCara. Did I say that right? Okay. I think you're on mute, Phyllis.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I'm an attorney in private practice in Rocky Hill. I've been practicing for 40 plus years, primarily in the family law area, and I'm a past member and past president of the board of directors at the Prudence Crandall Center.
Great, welcome. CJ Forcier.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. CJ Forcier. I am the regional manager for Judicial Department at the Court Support Service Division. I oversee the family courts in the western part of the state. So good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Great, good morning. Merritt LaJoy.
Good morning, everybody. Merritt LaJoy. I'm the complaint officer for the Office of the Victim Advocate, and I'm on the larger council. Our office is a member.
Great, welcome. Lieutenant Ryan Maynard.
Good morning, everyone. I apologize for not having video this morning as I'm working remote for another work commitment as well. I am the commanding officer of the Connecticut State Police Training Academy.
Great, welcome. Maurice Reeves.
Good morning, everyone. Maurice Reeves. I'm the Assistant Division Director of the Criminal Justice Policy and Planning Division here at OPM, and I'll be serving as the OPM designee until Mark's successor is named. Thank you.
Shauna Harrington.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, Shauna, did you freeze?
And I'm now the Director of Criminal. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. You might have just
Okay.
frozen for me, but I'm just checking if you froze for anybody else.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, sorry, everyone. I'll start over. I'm the Criminal Legal Advocacy Director here at CCADV. So Jerry has passed the baton to me. I now oversee the Family Violence Victim Advocate Program over the state.
Great. Mary Kazicki.
Good morning, everyone. Mary Kazicki, Director with the Connecticut Judicial Branch Office of Victim Services, and pleased to be here and part of this very important conversation. Thank you.
Joe DeTuno.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe DeTuno. I'm the Director of Family Services, part of the Judicial Branch Court Support Services Division.
Captain LaRock.
Good morning. I'm Heather LaRock. I am retired from the Orange Police Department. I retired back then in 2020, but I served as their domestic violence liaison as well as a post-certified DV instructor and our lab coordinator. So all of that. And then I went to the South Windsor Police Department for 2 years, but I am now a captain with the Windsor Police and I'm not going anywhere else.
Good. That's great. I'm sure Windsor's very excited about that as well. So, Bill.
Good morning, all. My name is Bill Anselmo. I am with Community Resources for Justice, nonprofit that provides domestic violence counseling to gentlemen that have been convicted or charged with domestic violence offenses. Prior to that, I was a chief probation officer with CSSD, and I oversaw the sex offender units for a number of years, and have some experience with GPS with regards to being installed on sex offenders when I was with the state. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know Adam, do you just, I know you had introduced yourself already as Senator Flexer's aide, but Kirsten, did you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Kirsten Briner. I'm the committee administrator for the Judiciary Committee, and I'm kind of just helping facilitate all of these meetings, as well as not just the subcommittees, but the larger working groups.
Okay. I think it was a little difficult, at least for me, to hear you, Kirsten, but I think you said that you are.
Better?
Yes.
So,
yeah, it's a little better.
Yeah, I have a mask on. We're sick at home. So my name is Kirsten Briner. I'm the committee administrator for the Judiciary Committee. So yeah, so I'm just helping facilitate the meetings for the larger council group as well as these subcommittees.
Thank you. That was much better. Thank you. Okay. With introductions done, I do want to ask for there to be a selection of 2 chairpersons for the committee. That's part of the statute. So we do need to nominate and elect 2 chairpersons to run this committee.
Megan?
Yes, Merritt LaJoy.
Yeah. Hi. I would like to nominate Gail Hardy and Jerry Wild to be co-chairs of the subcommittee. I think both Gail and Jerry bring a unique perspective, one from a prosecutorial standpoint, the other from a victim perspective. I think they both have a wealth of knowledge and experience and can lead this committee in getting some answers that we want to get answered. So I nominate Gail and Jerry.
Great. Any discussion?
I'll second that. Anytime I can get Jerry Wild more work, I'll certainly support that. And Gail's a perfect choice. So,
all right,
great. As is Jerry.
Great. Any other discussion before we close the nominations? Any other nominations? Hearing none, I move to close the nominations.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. Nominations are closed. I'll move to nominate Jerry Wild and Gail Hardy as the co-chairs of the subcommittee. Can I get a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Great. Congratulations, Gail and Jerry. Excellent. So I will actually pass the meeting off to you at this point to go through the agenda, but really excited that you're both co-chairing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Megan, and thank you all for nominating. Well, thank you, Merritt, for nominating us, and thank you for the trust that you placed in us. I've worked with most of you over the course of my career. As far as my relationship with Jerry, I think I first really met her in 2018 when she notified me about an issue with the victim in the Windsor Locks area. Just as she does now, we talked throughout the night, on a Friday night, throughout the weekend, to ensure that the victim in that case received the justice that she was seeking. So I'm pleased to be paired up with Jerry to collaborate on this subcommittee. And it is very important work, and we have a lot to do. With your support, I'm sure we can meet our goals. Jerry, would you like to say anything?
I just want to thank everybody, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I know I've worked with many of you over the years. We have a lot of work to do, but it's exciting work, and I think that we definitely have the right people on this subcommittee as well as the larger council, and I think a lot of movement is going to happen, a lot of good things for survivors. So thank you for your time.
Okay, so continuing with our agenda number 4, review, discuss, and prioritize the subcommittee's focus. As it relates to Public Act 23-136 under sub 8, it indicates arrests, prosecution, penalties, and monitoring for violations of family violence restraining orders issued pursuant to Section 46B-15 or criminal protective orders issued pursuant to 46B-38C, 54-1K, or 54-82R issued in family violence cases. And 9, the processing and execution of arrest warrants for incidents of family violence and monitoring, compliance, enforcement, and victim notification of firearm seizure and surrender in family violence cases. And this subcommittee has been named arrest warrants and orders of protection, compliance, enforcement, and outcomes. So what I'd like to do is to open the floor to get some sort of idea on where you guys see issues or concerns that you believe we should cover. And after we go through that process, hopefully we can prioritize how we should direct our focus.
So I have a question. Being new to the task force and also new to the legal part of this, I have no idea what any of you just said, what you just said means. So can we talk about what specifically you're referencing and what we're going to look to do with it? I'm not a lawyer, I'm an accountant.
So I think this is sort of a takeoff of our first meeting where Senator Flexer and Megan were nominated and appointed as chairs. And at that meeting, we discussed some of the priorities that we should address under the Public Act. And maybe Megan, you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, so to try to simplify it, and I might be oversimplifying the actual issue. So I don't, this is like a little bit more of a universal statement, but I think what we are hoping to address in this subcommittee are some ways that we can improve how the connection between arrest warrants and firearm seizure, to be perfectly honest. So, and to get to a more of a consistent way across the state of that happening. I think one of the specific issues that was brought up was how can we maybe work on something administratively through the courts where there's just some sort of record that the question has been asked by judge or prosecutor, or some sort of record that the firearms have actually been seized, because that often is a question that's often not consistent across the state. So we always safety plan, and I'm breaking this down like from the victim perspective, and Gail, I'm sure, can give the prosecutorial perspective of this, but we safety plan with individuals and we always assume there's firearms. Obviously, we know it's a little bit more complicated. There's legal and then illegal access to firearms, but for those that are legal and seized, I think we are trying to figure out, is there a better way than what we're doing now between law enforcement and the court system to really, I don't want to simplify it to say check a box that we've actually seized them, but like that's essentially, I guess, what we want to try to do is there a more official way of recording that as a step? And I don't know if Jerry, you wanted to elaborate any more than that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when Gail too was talking about like the 3 areas that this subcommittee, I don't know, Representative Nuccio, if that's what you were referring to, because the Public Act obviously had quite a bit of areas to be addressed. And everything that's listed in that Public Act it is important. But I think when the larger council met, they discussed prioritizing some of those areas, because obviously in the first year of this council, we're not going to be able to tackle and accomplish everything. So the larger task force identified the 3 subcommittees, including the offender program standards and law enforcement model policy response, and then this subcommittee. And the topics for the subcommittee were identified at that larger council.
Well, no, I get that, right? I know why the subcommittee's here and that. I meant specifically the laws that we're looking to review and which ones we're targeting. So with this one here, with the firearm, is that going to be our main focus for this one? Is just the firearms? Because I'm really concerned about people who are repeat offenders who keep getting let out on bond and reoffending.
So I think right now the purpose is to kind of get the priorities of the subcommittee. I know that was, and I don't want to, I guess I would just want to be clear that I don't think this committee and the council itself is just focused on legislative fixes, but certainly want to tackle things that are that can be administratively improved too. So I want to be clear that the committee does not have to look at everything as like a legislative fix, that we should be looking at ways that it might just be improving communication between systems, or it might be an administrative change in one system to better support another system. Certainly, I'm not taking legislative improvements off the table, but I just want folks to know that that's not like that doesn't have to be the answer to every problem that we're trying to improve. So that specifically, the topic that we were talking about, I know was talked about at the bigger council, but I think right now the goal of the committee is to kind of make that list of priorities so that we have goals.
Yeah, all right, that makes more sense. I thought we were just going to focus on, which we do have to focus on the gun safety piece of it, but I thought that was going to be like, I just didn't know what all those ramblings of the codes were and what that meant for us.
Yeah. And that's good too. We can always get out of our own jargon. So we're all going to have that system jargon that we use. So that's a good reminder as folks are sharing their priorities. Merit.
Thank you. So I think this is a great opportunity, especially for those of us that work directly with victims, and, from prosecutors and police to give their perspectives on the arrest warrants and orders of protection. I do have two issues I'd like to bring before the subcommittee. And I'd like to put in the chat a link. I just put it in there, to an article regarding the Bridgeport Police Department doing an arrest warrant sweep last week, where 22 suspects for a total of 28 arrests. I sent a link in the chat for everybody to see the article. These appear to be mostly domestic violence arrests from the charges that they're listing in here. And since one of the charges for this subcommittee is arrest warrants, and we know that part of the model policy suggests that domestic violence arrest warrants be prioritized and expedited, I think it would be good to know, and this article came out at the right time, what some of the issues are with arrest warrants in domestic violence situations, from the time of the incident to the time of the application, to the time of it being signed, to the time of it being executed. Because I know I speak with a lot of victims where arrest warrants are not timely in domestic violence situations. And there may be good reasons for some of those. But I think as a broader issue, this might be an interesting way to get a sampling of what might be happening out there in some of these departments. And if it's a resource issue, I think that's important for us to know as well. So I would suggest maybe the committee request some information from Bridgeport on these warrants that were served, so we can get a look at maybe what's happening in one of the larger cities in our state. So that's the first issue. I'd be happy to stop there if people want to comment.
Merritt, I'd just like to thank you for bringing this article to our attention. And I would encourage all of the members of this committee to take a look at that. Geraldine, or Jerry, brought the article to my attention yesterday. And when I first saw it, one of the things that I asked was, do we know the dates of the warrants? Do we know the dates of the incident? And, is this just a smaller piece of backlogged warrants for domestic violence that are pending? Because over the years we've seen incidents that have sometimes turned deadly, and and then we find out that there was a warrant that was sent back to prosecutors for review, and somewhere along the line there was some delay in either reviewing or executing that warrant. So again, Merritt, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and I will make sure that I contact the DV prosecutors, because they do have a dedicated domestic violence docket in Bridgeport. So I too want to find out more about the warrants and more about, again, when the incidents occurred, and thank God for the sweep, but we do need to get to the bottom of this. Anyone else want to address this?
I think this is a good topic. I would like to add, I would like to second Merritt's to add this, and just to add, if we can look at, as I mentioned, I'm really interested in, along with these warrants, how many of these people are out on bail and bond and then reoffend, right? How many times are they going back to their to the person that they're abusing or intimidating tactics and that. So we can look at, do we have the right policies in place to protect the victims? I think you have to link those, right? You have to look at the incident to the warrant, to the arrest, to the release, and then what happens in between. So if we can kind of just elaborate on what Merritt had, take that and draw it out and also look at those other instances, I think that would be really beneficial information to have, just to look at the policies that we have in place.
For me, I'd love to be able to get an idea of actually how this, no matter what the issue is, how it works, how it should work in practice. And if we could get some idea either from a presentation or multiple presentations about, any of these issues, about, what is in place currently, what is supposed to happen. Because I think if we go to things that might be outside of the norm, I guess might be the way to put it. But if we start looking at just these isolated incidents, we don't have any frame of reference to kind of determine if that's normal course of business or is that something that there was a reason for it. So for me, I'd love to be grounded more in what is the actual process that happens now so that we understand where things deviated, if they even deviated, and then really kind of figure out, data and statistics about all these different things, so we can move forward in a way that we're not just kind of dealing with one isolated incident, or rather we have something that we can at least say, hey, this is how it was supposed to be, this is how it deviated, and then go look at the reasons why. I think that would help me understand, as someone who isn't really dealing with, warrants in terms of my day-to-day operations or any of the things here. I'd love to have foundation for us to at least have a grounding to say, yeah, this is the way the process should work, whether it be model policy or whatever it is, so that we can then look at any other sort of incident off of that lens rather than making assumptions on something that happened in a one time, or it might be just the Bridgeport police. I just don't know.
I mean,
That's a great point.
That would serve us well throughout any of the things we look at.
Yeah, I would agree with Joe, and kind of the way I was thinking of it is we all come with certain expertise and certain experience, but it might be good at the beginning to set out how the process works so that everyone here understands how the process should work from the moment a person is arrested on a DV related offense and how they go through the court, how our family relations officers handle, how the police handle it. I think that would be a really good approach. I've been thinking about it and trying to put together kind of something that would explain kind of how it works from the initial on-site arrest, because we're dealing with on-site arrest and how they're handled. Then we're dealing with people who are arrested by warrants, and both kind of requires a lot of feedback into interchange of different agencies. And I think it would be really helpful for this group at the beginning to explain how it is supposed to work, so that everyone, Representative Nucci mentioned that she's an accountant. But I think it's good that if we make a presentation so that someone who's never dealt with this will look at it and say, all right, that's the process. And then once we understand the process, we can see what can maybe be tweaked, what can be made better, where is there kind of gaps in communication. I really would echo Joe's comments and have some ideas on how we could possibly do that.
I'd like to agree with you. By the way, just call me Tammy. The whole representative thing is just, anyway,
okay.
But just call me Tammy. But yeah, I agree. I think that process, and we have Captain LaRock on here. We've got the whole process. We can really look at what are the pain points for the police in these two different options, where it crosses over, what's the weak spot, and where we can strengthen it. If we have an example of how it works, and then details from people on what they're seeing, how it's actually playing out, that might be very helpful.
I'm wondering too if are all police departments pretty much follow the same policy on.
We do, yeah. We have what's called statewide model policy, and that's issued by Police Officer Standards and Training. And we're bound by certain things that we have. They're called statewide mandates. And those mandates are mandated arrest and safety planning and all of that victim services stuff that goes along with it. So if we have probable cause that a crime of violence has occurred between a family or household member, and there's a statutory definition there that I won't get into just for those of you who aren't law enforcement officers, but if a crime of violence occurs between what is deemed a family or household member by definition, we are mandated to make an arrest in that situation, okay? We have rules surrounding whether or not both parties get arrested. It should be the least common practice, where we call it a dual arrest. We should be finding the dominant aggressor in the situation. That's actually statutory language in that model policy. So those are the guidelines. Basically, there's a lot of other ones that surround our mandates for law enforcement, where we have to take action in a domestic violence situation. It's unique because there are many situations where we are mandated to make an arrest in Connecticut. So it takes away our discretion for the most part. And then we also have certain things procedurally that we have to follow once we get them to the station during processing, specifically that upon their release, they are given something called conditions of release. Okay, so if they're being held on bond, then this doesn't apply at all. And they get held overnight, and they ideally get arraigned the next day, unless it's a weekend or a holiday. And that's fine. So we do not have to impose conditions of release, because once they are brought to court, the court upon arraignment will automatically issue an order of protection. Okay, but if they are released on bond prior to their arraignment, which by statute needs to be the next business day of the court in a domestic violence situation, the court date assigned upon their release is the next business day. If they are released, we impose something called conditions of release. They are non-financial conditions it's a temporary order of protection that is made to bridge the gap between the time that they are released and the time that they are arraigned, where the court will then issue their own order of protection. And I'm going to hand off the baton, because that's how it works for the police.
So I have a quick question. Is there a time frame? So if it's not an on-site arrest and the police department gets all the information on the individual, they go back, they write the warrant. Is there a time frame where the warrant has to be presented to a state's attorney? Once it gets to the state's attorney, is there a time frame? Because I wonder if the question is, the behavior happens, how soon do we have a warrant lodged on NCIC? I'm not sure if that's even the name of it anymore. I've been out of it for a while. And then what steps are taken to pick up that person? We also have, with my probation background, there is a policy, and I'm sure Joe could follow up on this, with regards to if somebody's on probation for a domestic violence offense and they're not following the conditions, or they get rearrested for anything else, the process that probation does to bring a warrant back to the court on somebody who's already been convicted on domestic violence, and what the timeframes are there, because they pose just as much of a risk to the victim as a current offense or a new offense, I would say.
I think, Bill, this really does segue into the fact that I think that if we had a presentation from Dan Cargill, probably, or somebody that kind of, if we can all put this on the table, and there's so many branches and nuances that are just going to be questions that I think as a body we can start getting the answer to. Maybe there aren't time frames. I'm not sure. Maybe police departments have their own time frames. I don't know the answer to any of that. But I think until we get the baseline of understanding of how this should play out, and where there might be gaps in the system, I think that we're going to be at a loss to answer some of these questions. And I would love to have something where I can at least have some sort of a diagram or some flow chart to say this is how it should be. And then I think after you get that, then you can really ask the questions that I think many are asking. And I think Merritt's question is very valid, is how come in this situation A, B, or C happened? And why is that allowable within the normal way the system operates? I just don't know the answer to that. And I would love to, because a lot of the things that we feel are problematic, we just don't know where that fits into this whole systematic approach.
Yeah.
Joe, sorry, Your Honor, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you, Joe, for kind of summarizing that. I think a presentation would be a great idea, maybe for our next meeting, And we could start off with law enforcement's response or actions. We could talk to Dan Cargill here at CCADV, and then Lieutenant Maynard, I don't know, is part of you had said the training academy, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And also, we did just go over that model policy. There aren't many changes, just a few relative to adding like risk protection orders and then some language. So I think that's an easy enough lift to get everybody on the same page.
Okay, and then also to Captain LaRock, we could have Dan, we can talk to the three of you about maybe a presentation at the next meeting. Does that sound okay to everyone? And then we can hopefully get more of an accurate view from law enforcement, and then maybe kind of then start shifting down the line, as Judge Doyle had mentioned, once it gets into the state's attorney's office hands.
But I also think it would be good for us as a body to write down the questions that we have, right? I think there's things that Merritt raised that are very legitimate. I think there's something off of there, so that as we're doing this work of understanding how the process unfolds, we should be still thinking about some of the questions that the subcommittee has, so that they could be answered by the people who are doing the presentation, so they can be prepared when we go through this exercise. Because I think after law enforcement, obviously there's a prosecutorial part of it, there's the court part of it. I think everyone has a hand in this too.
Right, and the process can sometimes be different depending upon what court or what jurisdiction you're dealing with. So what we want to do here today is just to set the focus of this subcommittee, and as Jerry indicated, as Judge Doyle and Joe all stated, yes, we can bring presenters in as early as our next meeting to give all of those who are unfamiliar with what happens in criminal courts, from arrest to prosecution to sentencing to violations and so on. We can set all of that up just so that everybody is operating on an even playing field from the start. So, again, Merritt, thank you for bringing this issue to our attention, and it allows us to have some focus for our next meeting.
So it looks like, Madam Chair, that we're in somewhat of an agreement that we're going to first start with processing and execution of arrest warrants for incidents of family violence as our first kind of leg in this as we move forward, and then we'll decide after we get that under advisement, then we'll move on to something else. Or did you want to do something other than that?
No, I think that's a good plan to approach it from the point of arrest, and then move on to the other processes, getting that matter into court, whether it be by arrest warrant, whether it be an on-site arrest, and what happens once that person is presented, or in the case of a warrant arrest, what happens, a complaint comes in of a domestic violence offense. Police take that complaint. What happens from the point at which that person walks into a police station to the point at which a warrant is drafted, and then a warrant goes to a prosecutor's office? And, again, maybe somewhere down the line, we can make some recommendations as to, how the process should be standardized. If it's not done through the model policy, at least hopefully we can get the different jurisdictions on board to establish our own limits as to when a warrant comes into a prosecutor's office. If there has to be some corrections, the follow-up that's required to make sure that corrections, follow-ups, edits are made, and then service of warrants. So
what I would suggest, Madam Chair, is that the rest of the system kind of start working on their part of it and not have law enforcement, then we wait. And so if people, however you decide, and maybe it's offline, and just to say, hey, who's going to be responsible for the other parts of it, so that we can maybe not present it simultaneously, but at least start getting all our information, so that we can be efficient and expedite some of this work.
I agree with that. Jerry?
Yeah, I was just going to say too, I'm just thinking as far as data too, I think it would probably be important for us to know like the numbers, like what are we talking about, how many? And Maurice, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. But I'm gonna, no, OPM I know has had reports in the past around arrest warrants that you had on your website. I'm not quite sure where you get the data from, if you're getting it from judicial, if you're I don't know. Kevin Neary is, I don't know if he's your guru there to get the data.
Thank you, Jerry. And I do believe Kevin Neary and previous research unit directors would have worked with judicial to get that information. I don't believe we've continued those reports on arrest warrants. I think they were removed from statute, but prior, that is where we would have gotten the information.
And just, I know when I quick looked the other day, I just saw that you were collecting, it was a breakdown by town that you were able to get. So I think maybe we can kind of work on, I'll be more than happy to make some phone calls to see if we can get some data to know what numbers we're talking about. There was a breakdown by municipality, new warrants per month that came in, and activity that had taken place on those warrants. And I think that report also had a probation component, but I don't know if judicial could also tease out domestic violence specific, but we can check on that.
Could we also include the part that we started talking about in the beginning, like where in this process, if we can just kind of highlight also the firearm seizure part, like where that comes in, because I believe that's what police, right? That's happens before the courts, but now you can go to the courts, right, without going to the police. So I don't know how that piece, but making sure we just fold in the firearm safety piece and the safety planning.
Yeah, maybe it would be good, and just to help Captain LaRock and Lieutenant Maynard and Dan Cargill, sounds like they're going to be up our leadoff hitters here. Maybe the way to look at it, and this is just a suggestion to think about, is distinguishing between an on-site domestic violence arrest and an arrest warrant has to be obtained because the defendant is not present. Okay. And maybe the initial response from the 911 call. My understanding, I think, is a lot of the 911 operators are trained to specifically handle a domestic violence related call and to ask pertinent questions, to provide that information, how officers are made aware of the possibility of access to firearms from the response to the call to the time they get there, because obviously that's something they need to know. Then how they handle the situation when they get there in terms of, doing their initial investigation, looking into the access to firearms and what they deal with at that point. And then whether, the person's going to be brought back to the station to be processed, or they're going to be given paperwork there, and how that's handled. I just think it would be really helpful to take it step by step from that process to the point that they then get to the court, because we know they're going to be arraigned within the next day, or if it's over the weekend on that Monday. And then obviously Joe and I and other people from judicial can explain what the uniform response is with our family relations officers in the court. And we can kind of take it that way just to help people know what they need to focus on. I think that gives a good overview to get started. And then we can fit in, Jerry will have access, and Maurice, to the statistics. I was never good with statistics. If I could do math, I probably wouldn't be on this call. But I just think then we can put it all together in a way that someone who's never heard this will have a good understanding when we're done. And I think that's our goal.
Thank you.
I think it also might be helpful. A lot of what's been discussed regarding arrest warrants is in the model policy. If we send a link out to everybody on the model policy, I know we made some changes last week in the subcommittee, but for our purposes, for this section, which is unchanged. I think it might be helpful for members to see, because there are no timelines. It's using words like, and I'm reading right from the policy itself, an officer should expedite the application for an execution of the arrest warrant. So we use these terms that aren't defined. So what does expedite mean? Or as, an arrest warrant should be sought as soon as possible. So I think it might be helpful for the members of this subcommittee to also have access to that language so that they know when we reference that model policy, what we're talking about.
Merritt, I've put a link in the chat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Madam Chairman, I would also suggest, as we're talking about, firearm seizures, I remember years ago, I believe we had the state police unit came in and kind of really like what Joe was talking about, what that process is for legal gun owners and the intersection between, the protective order being issued and what they do. That was very helpful for me to see from that perspective how that starts and how that works before we start looking at how our systems can kind of address that, to look at what the system that exists now, when that unit, I think for the state police, is made aware that a protective order is issued and they cross-reference that regarding somebody has a legal right or a permit to carry a firearm. That process was very helpful for me to kind of as a base to have a start to see, okay, ideally registered gun owners, let's see how that works first. Because I think we're actually, we're talking about two issues, registered firearms owners and those that are, I think, two separate and distinct kind of issues. So that was very helpful to me years ago when I was kind of made aware of that presentation.
Thank you, CJ. And I think that was related to the special license and firearms unit. Brianna, Bree Maurice presented. We can always have her come in to provide an overview, as well as maybe Toby Pataginas, once an order gets entered into the protective order registry, probably would be good to bring in as well.
So it seems that we've established some priorities with how we'd like to proceed. And I think that Jerry and I can identify some presenters for our next meeting, just to, again, give everyone an overview of how the system is supposed to work. Jerry, do you have other ideas or suggestions?
We never got to Merritt's second issue, Madam Chairwoman. I don't know if we should. I don't know if we should get to the second issue first. Merritt really gave us a lot in the first, but go ahead, Merritt. Should we get to the second
sorry,
issue?
Merritt.
That's okay.
I
don't
go
want to
back a
dominate
long
the
way with
meeting.
Merritt, and I don't want to forget her.
Thank you, Judge. So the second issue, this was an issue that recently came to the OVA's attention by way of a complaint. And it's really the confidentiality of an address, a victim's residential address on a protective order. I know the practice has always been, if the victim has requested that information remain confidential to the defendant, there was a practice of either putting the DV organization address on there or some alternate address that would not identify where the victim resided. Or we used to see in many cases where it would just say, or wherever the victim shall reside. And it was always told to the defendant, your obligation is, if you walk in and the victim is present, you turn around and walk out. Because there have been arguments that, well, the defendant needs to know where he can't go, which is not really a valid argument when we're talking about domestic violence. Because again, the defendant's obligation is to turn around and walk away, not stay. And so in this particular case, there was an argument made by the defense attorney that he had to know where not to go. And so unfortunately, the judge released that information to the defendant, and the victim had moved specifically after the offense. So this was at the time an address he did not know. And And so Jerry and I had conversations about this. Jerry had conversations with Toby over at the Protective Order Registry. And it really seems like there's a statute that needs to be looked at, which is 5482F, I believe. I'm going on my memory here, sorry.
5486.
80, is it 86F? Okay.
86E.
E.
Sorry, Merritt, I also
That's
have
okay, no.
with
Yeah.
Gail about it.
And so I think we just, I think that needs to be examined because I think different things are happening around the state in different courts. And I think we need to be very clear when we're issuing a protective order, it's for the protection of a victim. We shield information from defendants, for example, in witness protection cases. So it can be done. We just have to be consistent and have a process that everybody will follow. But I think it's a bigger issue, and certainly not in all cases. Defendants often know where their victims are. But when the victim does make this request, I think that we need to respond, and that is not to release her new address to a defendant. So I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
And Merritt, too, on the family court side, there is a form that a victim can fill out when they're applying for a restraining order. It's the JDFM 188 that
Right.
they request that their address be kept confidential.
Right. So if we can do it in family court, we can certainly do it in criminal court.
And Merritt, I will add that has been something that our advocates have worked with as well when requesting orders of protection. And we have managed that by not including that information on the copy that is provided to the defendant. And I think that part of that conversation and presentation with Toby Pataginis will be very helpful because there are points that need to be considered in maintaining information within the registry, but there have been practices that have been put in place so as not to have that information provided to the defendant. But I agree, it's a good point for conversation to try to find a consistent practice across the state to manage those types of situations. So thank you for raising that.
I have to apologize, everyone. I'm sorry. I had told Jerry, I just have to get off now. I have a proceeding at 10 o'clock. But whatever else you need, Jerry, and Gail, let me know, okay? Thank you, everybody.
Very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So, Merritt, yes, Jerry did discuss that with me on Friday. And I believe that it's definitely something that this subcommittee needs to take up. And, the protection and safety of the victim should always be paramount. And as Merritt mentioned, we do it in so many other cases in our criminal courts, whether it's, witnesses who, or persons who witnessed violence or who have information about gang activity. Because for a while in a number of the bigger cities, you saw in these gang cases, victim and witness information being posted on telephone poles or posted in the community. And we had our courts to enter orders that defense attorneys were not to release certain identifying information about the witnesses or the victims to the defendant. And so I see that there's no reason that couldn't be done in cases of domestic violence. That's what's supposed to be done. That's what the statute outlines. But we want to make sure that that the statute is being followed consistently throughout our state.
And I think, Gail, I think that's just it, consistency, right? The uniformity across the state, because I think there's a difference from court to court of whether they allow that to happen. In my conversation with Toby, I mean, to be full disclosure, in my conversation with her about this, she was focusing on the fact that they need to get the information into the protective order registry. So not necessarily, she doesn't have anything to do with the information being released to the defendant or a respondent. Their goal is to get the information into the protective order registry and then to notify the local law enforcement agency. So again, I think she could certainly share information about her focus and what she is doing. But I think there's more discussion around what are we asking victims to do, or sharing information of victims in the courts and that process, and what does it look like across the state, because it is different.
Now, Jer, what you are saying is that the policy of putting wherever he or she may reside is problematic from that perspective. Because I think I know the case of merit citing, and I think everything in our policy that was kind of followed up until the point that there was a decision made that it should be included on that protective order. But again, I think you're referring to, I think, what Toby's saying about, and again, I've been, with my boots, that becomes problematic. And there's some pushback from a lot of clerks' offices to saying wherever he or she may reside is not good enough.
Correct. And then there's the address confidentiality program, right? So a survivor of certain crimes can apply to be to have their address protected and have their mail being sent to an alternative address through the ACP program, Safe at Home. And a victim survivor should be able to use that, but that's going to be listed as a PO box. So some courts may not allow that address to be put on the order as well.
Okay, so now we have another issue of focus for this group. Are there any other issues that you think this group should tackle? And then again, we can decide how to prioritize them. Joe? Oh.
I was just going to say, I try not to bite off more than we can chew. I mean, it's an awful lot to do, and we have to just make sure that we do it in a way that is orderly and we get to the finish line. But this is probably more like a marathon than a sprint. So I think just making sure that we are orderly in what we try to accomplish.
Okay. So
I think, Maurice, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to ask the chairs if it would be helpful if I talk to Kevin, because I don't think we've done that warrant report since the summer of 2021, but to talk to him about what went into that, see if we could do one and provide a sample or a current view of the system to the chairs, and also see if he can specify it for warrants for domestic violence crimes. And I can try to get that information to you before the next meeting, if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Maurice. And I could certainly reach out to you.
Okay.
Thank you to follow up.
And Lieutenant Maynard is on the call as well. One of the things that I did yesterday was to look at state police website. I know, I think it was every other year, they would put out the uniform crime report, and in some aspect, the offenses that were domestic violence offenses would be listed in there. But when I looked yesterday, I couldn't find it. I don't know if state police are no longer preparing that report, or if it's difficult to even sort of parse out those offenses that are domestic violence offenses. Lieutenant Maynard, are you there? Is anyone else familiar with that uniform crime report? Anyone here on the call?
So uniform crime report isn't exclusive to the state police. It's something that every police department participates in. And it depends on how each individual police department has a records management system or whatever their CAD and RMS system is, as to how that data is captured and as to whether or not it can be mined. So I would be able to go in, and we use a system called NextGen. I would be able to go in and search assaults. I would be able to go in and search larceny. But to be able to say whether or not another agency would be able to say, yes, domestic specific we could get, I can get it for my agency, but statewide, each municipality uses different systems. You might not be able to get that data statewide. State police, yes, because they're their own entity, obviously, but the municipalities might be a challenge to be able to collect that. I don't know if the courts record that information in some way that would be retrievable. That might be a little easier to do as a repository.
Gail, I know in the past when CCADV, we've requested some information from judicial, because again, Connecticut doesn't have a domestic violence. You can't get arrested for domestic violence, but there's certain crimes that may fall under family violence. We've requested data from judicial in the past, providing them with specific statutes numbers, and then they're able to pull data as long as it's flagged in the system. And I know those cases, as they come into the court, the state's attorney's offices, right, correct, are the ones that flag an arrest as being family violence?
Yes, we do. And you know, we're really just starting to get our case management system sort of organized to specifically what we're seeking. And we actually stole one of OPM's data guys. We have Kyle, I think it's Bowden, who's working with us now. So yesterday I was speaking with him to find out if there was a way to, you know, get those stats and to get information about exactly how many domestic violence warrants are pending in the state. And, you know, he told me that he would get back to me and see if he could try to figure that out. So
I just sent everybody a link to the latest 2022 Family Violence Detail Report from the state police.
Yes.
And that'll give them an idea of what Captain LaRock was referencing.
thank you, Mary. So, Jerry, should we go on to the next agenda item and decide when we're going to meet and how often we're going to meet? I think we sort of have our marching orders. Next meeting, we're going to bring in presenters. This meeting is always a virtual meeting, correct, Megan?
Yes, these are all virtual, but they are recorded to be made public for the public. Yeah.
And Gail, just before we jump to the meetings, another thing on the agenda for agenda item 5 was regarding additional subcommittee members, and that's probably was a poor use of words there. But it was more of looking at the fact of bringing in presenters. It was topic specific presenters, not to expand the subcommittee membership, but to that we are going to be bringing in presenters at different times topic specific, which of course we've talked about in the beginning of the meeting, so, and identified several. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Jerry and I were trying to determine how often we should meet and how long our meetings should be. I think an hour and a half, it sounds like this meeting is going to be right around an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. Is that, do you all think that that is a sufficient amount of time? We don't want to take away from your other obligations. I'm seeing yes. As far as a standard meeting date or time, our larger board meeting is the last Wednesday of every month.
Yeah.
And that's at 12:30.
Yeah, 12:30 to 2.
This meeting today.
Does Tuesdays work for people? Tuesday mornings?
Unfortunately, not for me. I'm actually missing a meeting to attend today.
Okay. For Tuesday or Tuesday mornings?
Tuesday mornings. Tuesday afternoon would be fine.
Is Tuesday afternoon good for everyone?
Would it make sense to maybe just meet after our larger subcommittee, since we're all gonna actually have that date already set? Would it be okay to meet like subsequently to our big meeting or prior to? I mean, it's just a day that we're already kind of holding in abeyance, so.
So you're saying the last Wednesday of the month?
Yeah, just not this last Wednesday, Joe.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's just, I think just putting all our schedules, we're gonna have people miss. I know that we're gonna be committed to that larger committee, so.
So 11 o'clock on that meeting date, or would you prefer after that meeting?
I mean, since it's like 12:30, it's like right smack in the middle of the day. It really doesn't matter. Whatever everybody thinks is probably before, I would think, because then you don't feel like you're, but it's availability. And if that doesn't work for people, it doesn't really matter to us. It means that there's going to be people that have to miss, right? I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Okay, also, I think the larger committee meets in person where we're talking virtual, right?
Yeah, now that may change. I think we talked about this at the first meeting. Once session starts, I think have to be a little bit more flexible with the larger group. And Kirsten will work with Kirsten on if there's room availability or not. But if there's not, we will have to meet virtually.
So 11 o'clock on the last Wednesday of the month. Is that good for everyone? Thumbs up? No?
Yes. Does it not work for anyone? All right.
Well, good. And again, that's not going to be next Wednesday, but it will be the following month. Jerry?
The 20th.
Yes, so that was
The 28th would be our first meeting. I mean, for this, okay.
correct, February 28th.
So moving along to item 7, is there any other business that we should take up? CJ, you wanted to say something?
No. I've said enough, Gail. I've said enough.
Been a little quiet today.
I know.
Yeah, but I've been limited to how much I can talk at one meeting, so.
So if there's no other business, I thank you all for meeting today. I think we covered a lot of ground. Jerry and I have our marching orders and we'll get right to it. Is there?
Thank you, Gail. Jerry, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Thank you, everyone.
Again, thank